your identity, your purpose, your destiny.
Remember, your strength comes from your yieldedness to the process and journey. I don't know that God is necessarily concerned about making us happy. I think he's more concerned about making us holy. It's never God that's questionable. It's always our obedience.
Welcome to Becoming Whole, the podcast dedicated to shining light on things in the character to help you become better, stronger, and more aware of who you are and who you are called to be. And now, here's your host, Daria Elizabeth.
Relationships Part 2. Relationships Part 2. 1 Corinthians 13. I love how Paul lays this out here for us. It is known as the love chapter, but what an incredible example of what love isn't and what genuine love is. I love how he says in verse 1 through 3 that I can do all these things. I can prophesy, preach, teach. I can speak in all the tongues in the world. I can have the gift of faith and have such a strong gift of prophecy. I can understand all mysteries, and I can have so much knowledge, and I can. And really, he ends up covering every angle here. If there was an angle that he missed, I don't see it. He speaks about being a giver. He speaks about someone who has incredible knowledge, someone who has the giftings of prophecy. They understand mysteries. He speaks about being able to speak in tongues. All these wonderful things that we classify and categorize as maturity. We see someone who is gifted and skilled, and automatically our minds equate skill to maturity. But I love how he lays out the fact that just because you are skilled and gifted by God to do a certain thing, that does not equal your character, and that does not equal your ability to love and to know how to treat people. And he makes it so plain here in verse 3. He says, even though I give all of my goods and belongings to feed the poor, and even if I give my very body to be burned, that's a big thing he just said. The word of God says, greater love has no man than this, than a man who would lay down his life for a friend. Meaning, if you would die for a person, you're a true friend. If you are willing to give up your life, which is all that you have, if you're willing to give up your life for somebody else, it meant you genuinely did love them, for real. But he's saying here, even if I did that, but I did not possess love, it really didn't matter. I really amount to nothing. And then verse 4 through 8, he goes into such an incredible definition relationally of what self-sacrificial, that preferential treatment that we spoke about in part 1 of relationships, what it looks like. Verse 4, love endures long and is patient and is kind. Let me tell you, my mom always says, if you love someone, give it time. Because time displays all things. Someone can only show their representative for so long. Someone can only show their good side, for so long. Time has a way of qualifying who a person genuinely is. Because what happens is, in a short period of time, you don't really know a person. Let the storms come, let the winds blow, let the floods come, let the different raging events in life happen. And then you'll know who a person genuinely is. What God does is that he takes us through different circumstances that build our endurance. And not just that, but it causes us to see our endurance. The word of God says, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. And so verse 4 says, love endures long, meaning that genuine preferential treatment of your spouse or significant other or your lover or the person that you are in relationship with, that's the first marker. Are you able to endure long with that person? Are you patient with that person? And kind, none of us love the King James. The King James says love suffers long. We're like, take the word suffer out, please. Put something nice. Put something that sounds prettier in that place, please. But it's true. Suffer is long, and suffering doesn't look pretty, but suffering is powerful because there's a divine cleansing that happens when we suffer things or suffer loss. I'll never forget, after my dad passed, God showed me a dream. And in the dream, he explained to me that from this point forth, I'm going to take you through a series of things that your flesh is going to die. And after that, I remember I had a vision of a storm. It looked like a tsunami hurricane. I can't really describe it to you, but it looked like a tsunami hurricane all in one, and it was coming towards me. And I remember in the vision, I was shaking my head. I said, no. I said, God, is there any way you can let this pass? Please, no. And you know what I heard? Crickets. Cricket. God was like, no, you're gonna go through this, boo. I need to strip you. I need to purify you and cleanse you for the journey and the task in hand. Like, no, you're gonna go through. And since that point, I would say up until about 2019, there were a lot of things that I suffered loss. A lot of things that grieved me severely. A lot of things and hurts and traumas and things that I went through that God literally stripped me of everything. That same year that my dad passed, I went to a revival, and the prophet there, who was the guest speaker for the evening, said to me, God is going to make every single thing in your life new. There is not one thing in your world starting next year that will not be different or new. And so said, so done. From my job to where I live to, every single thing in my life is brand new. Nothing is the same. And the thing about that is that when God takes you through an experience, when he makes you new and makes things around you new, before that is something called the stripping. It's something called the pruning. It's something called the pulling back of the Lord. It's something called, that God is looking to do this divine metamorphosis, which entails stripping. And so, the year after that, is when it took off. God started taking things away from me. People that I relied on, people that I looked up to, people that I depended on, people that were supposed to be, my source of inspiration, my source of hope, all of these different things. God started pulling them left, right, front, and center so that he would know. I love how Tony Evans said it. Sometimes God lets you hit rock bottom so you'll discover that he is the rock on the bottom. And God himself, just like Job, stripped me of everything. And I discovered that, he really is the rock at the bottom. Because I've fallen, but I've fallen on the rock. And I realized that every single believer must go through a Job-like experience. I'm not saying mine was as severe as Job. I didn't have boils, so I wasn't saying it was as severe, but every believer, in order for you to be transformed and to learn what endurance looks like, and every believer, in order for you to understand the character of Christ, must go through a Job-like experience. It's one thing to know him through book knowledge. It's something else to know him through experiential knowledge. And when there's a marriage of those two together, the power that's birthed in your life is unparalleled. And so verse 4 says here that, love endures long. Before you get into any dynamic, there's a level of endurance that God has to build in you for that thing to last. In order for whatever you're in to be a great success. Relationships have highs and lows. Relationships go through things that really, test and prove them. Again, I love how my youth leader said, my husband isn't perfect, but he's perfect for me. And another friend of mine said, yes, marriage is a rose or a bed of roses. It really is. Because you have the sweet fragrance of the rose, but you also have the thorns. And so every dynamic, every relationship goes through those ups and downs, but there's a power behind being able to endure. And even when you endure a thing, God himself is teaching you good character. And when you endure a thing, God himself is showing and unveiling and uncovering to you the truth about yourself, where you are, where you're not, and where he wants you to be. And so it takes time and patience to learn endurance, but endurance is learned throughout our lives and throughout our relationships. And so it's a powerful part of preferring. When you can endure a hardship or a trial with someone, it's a powerful part of enduring. And it's a powerful part of preferring. And it's a powerful part of agape. The next part of the verse says, love is never envious. And it never boils over with jealousy, meaning that love is never, or again, agape, or again, to prefer. When you prefer someone above yourself, you are never mad at what they have and then desire that you have it instead of them. That's what envious means. You always cheer them on, pushing them to the finish line. Guys, this is a powerful thing. Love elevates. Love doesn't tear people down. If you will know that you genuinely love someone because you are always trying to elevate them. You are always wanting to motivate them. And you are always desiring to liberate them. You never want to see them sad, never want to see them in bondage, never want to see them hurt or crying, and never want to see them adversely affected by the things you do or the things that others do in their life. Powerful point. That when you love someone, you will always elevate them. So you will never seek, because after a while, jealousy and envy eventually lead to murder if you're not careful. Because you want what this person has, then you're disgusted at them, or you're ticked off at them, or you're bothered, and then you don't think they should have it. So now what's the next step? Now you do things to sabotage. And if you're in a relationship that is full of sabotage, get out. I'm not talking about marriage. Y'all gonna have to pray through that, counsel through that. Work through that. I'm talking about if you're in a courting dynamic or a dating dynamic and this person is always trying to sabotage. That means that person has issues, that they have baggage in the closet that they have not worked on. Love does not sabotage. I'm going to say it again. That's for somebody. Love, true love, genuine love, preferential love does not sabotage. Join me next week for part 3, where we continue on relationships.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of Becoming Whole. Tune in next time for Becoming Whole. And remember, the world needs you whole.